Hi everyone, this is Sam Gabriel. In today's video, I want to talk about a common question that I get a lot from customers and in proof of concepts and doing demos. Um, the question is usually about how we can stitch together two pieces of a conversation. So think of it as a uh, a connection in front of a load balancer and then the connection at the back of the load balancer. So from the client side and then from the server side, how do you trace a connection throughout since there are two different connections? So the reason for the ask a lot of times is in troubleshooting scenarios where you see the problem, but you really want to know the actual client IP that's experiencing this issue. And all you get really is the NATed IP, and that's if you have a feed into the ExtraHop from the server side of the load balancer or firewall. If you have a feed into ExtraHop from both the client side of the load balancer and the server side of the load balancer, you're going to see both sides of the conversation. However, you won't be able to stitch together which exact client IP resulted in the backend server call. So this is where I wanted to talk about how we can do this in ExtraHop and share with you a bundle that I put together specifically for the F5 load balancer around that.
Basically, here's my lab setup and what I'm trying to achieve here. So we got the client side of the conversation, we got the server side of the conversation, we got the F5 in the middle, and I set up the real servers, two real servers ending in a .10 and a .20, and the services are web on 8080, port 8080, and just SSH on port 2022. So this is the server side, and then this is the client side. I have my machine here, so this is the client side subnet. I got the two VIPs here for web and SSH. They're from the same subnet as the client side, and then I got the source NAT for the F5, same subnet as the server side. The ExtraHop is connected to both sides, and it's feeding the EXA where we're going to do most of our work. Um, so I'm going to pivot over to the ExtraHop to show you how to be able to see if you're doing some troubleshooting and you only have connection to maybe the server side, or you do have both connections to the client and server, but there's no real way to stitch both sides of the flows together. How this can be done with this bundle. So let me pivot over to the ExtraHop. So typically you want to do when you're troubleshooting something and you want to see who's connecting. So you want to probably search on the real server that we have here, and I'm going to look at the .20. So I'm searching the last hour and a half, and here I'm looking at what's coming up as flow, advanced TCP client, and F5. So I'm going to only look at the flow records and the F5 connections records. So I will filter on those. So first of all, before I click on flow, this is what you'll get with the bundle. So you get the client IP, which is the real side, the real client IP, the source port from that client, the VIPs that we're hitting, the destination port on the VIP side. So you can see it's port 80 on the VIP side, and then this is the backend, the server side. You got the source NAT, the source port. In this case, the F5 is preserving the source port on the client and the server side, but it's not always going to be the case. Some folks won't enable it. Maybe if you have a lot of connections, it won't preserve it. But then you get the real side, real IPs, and the real server destination ports. Now, once I click on flow here, I'm going to add the flow records as well. So both flow records and F5 connections records that are in the search here. What I'll do in this case, I know a source port that I'm interested in, so I'm going to search for it as a generic field. and this one is 49670. Add this filter. So what will happen is now you get these three records, one F5 connections record and two flows. So typically this is what you're going to get from the ExtraHop that has a server-side connection only. You're going to get the source NAT IP and port from the F5, the real IP address and the real server destination server port, and then this is the response back from the real server going back to the F5. So the real question here that we're trying to answer is, well, which real client IP did we see? Because we only see the source NAT here. So this is where, when we have this kind of search enabled or filters enabled, you'll be able to stitch that together. And basically, what you see here is you get that same source port on the server side with the same server IP with the same destination port. So these three fields need to match, as you can see here. The easiest thing to do is to search on the port, the source port, and from here, your answer will be on this side here. So this is the real client IP with the real source port, and this was the VIP that was accessed, and this was the VIP destination port that was accessed. So basically, that's how you would do this. Now, if I were to remove this, you'll actually see, because the ExtraHop has a connection on both the client and the server side, so you can see here that if I enable flow, just to get the flow ID, you can see that the first of all, I'd like to sort this in time. The reason why the F5 connection will always come in at the bottom is because this is actually a syslog, so we're capturing the syslog message from the F5 on the ExtraHop via UPA trigger for UDP payload, and it will always be a little later than the actual traffic that came through. So we're looking at the last hour and a half. There's a neat feature here in time where you can adjust the time for a plus minus 1 minute or 5 minutes. So if you do that for 1 minute, you've zoomed really in to be able to capture that flow. But here, when you look at the actual ExtraHop flow, you'll see that these two are the same flow ID, and these two are the same flow ID and different from the first. So these two are on the server side, these two are on the client side. In this case, it happens to be that like I mentioned before, the port is the same, so you'll be able to stitch it together from here. But in reality, the F5 might not preserve this port, and that way you won't know for sure that this flow corresponds to this flow on the client end. And that's why I created this bundle to be able to stitch these two pieces together via the connection table on the F5 and send it via a log. So hopefully this will be helpful, and I'll be posting the bundle very soon. Thank you for listening.